Interesting question about franchises too, and mentioned Campbell's Soup and Kellogg, and I am no expert on that, but I would say that just based on my general observation over the years is that the problems there came from two different things. I think that the problems with cereal, ready-to-eat cereal, were not so much changes in taste or consumption patterns, but I think they made it just push their pricing too far to the point that they lost market share without having the moat that they thought they had, as opposed to the General Mills cereals and the General Food cereals and all of that sort of thing. I mean, if your pricing really gets out of whack and people regard Wheaties or Grape Nuts in the same category as they regard Kellogg's Corn Flakes, you're going to lose share. And once you start losing share, it's hard to get back. Problems with soup, I think, relate more to lifestyle. I think that it's become it's a little less. It fits in a little less well with current lifestyles maybe than 40 years ago. Soft drinks. The consumption of soft drinks, I don't have the figures here, but I would wager that in 110 years, the per capita soft drinks has gone up virtually every year throughout that history. I mean, it's now close to 30% of U.S. consumption of liquids. So if the average American has about 64 ounces of liquids a day, you're talking about, say, 18 ounces of that being soft drinks, and 43% of that 18, or almost 8 ounces a day, being Coca-Cola products. In other words, 1/8 of all the liquid man, woman, and child in the United States take in comes from Coca-Cola products. But that has gone up virtually. Well, throughout the world, it's gone up on a per capita basis, almost since soft drinks were discovered. That people, I would say that trend is almost impossible to reverse on a worldwide basis. I mean, there's so much potential in countries where per capita consumption is like, I think it's maybe 8 per capita, which is 8-ounce servings. They talk in terms of 64 ounces a year. So you have 1/50th of the consumption per capita on Coke products in some important countries that you have here. I just don't see it as being. Now, you can push pricing too far. I mean, there comes a point. Depends on the country in which you're doing it, and depends even on areas within the country in which you do it. But if you establish too wide a differential between Coke and a private label product, you will change consumption patterns somewhat. Not huge, but enough so that you don't want to do it. But I don't think you'll see. It's interesting. Coffee has gone down every year. People talk about Starbucks and all that, but if you look at coffee consumption in this country, if you look at milk consumption in the country, per capita it just goes down, year after year after year after year. And I think it's pretty clear what people like to drink once they get used to it. And with the price, is when I was born in 1930, a 6.5-ounce Coke cost a nickel, and you put a 2-cent deposit on the bottle. But forget about that; just take the nickel. Now you buy a 12-ounce can or a larger product, and you're paying. And if you buy it on the weekends at the supermarket specials or something, you're paying maybe a little more than twice per ounce what you were paying in 1930, 70 years ago. And compare that to the price behavior of almost any product that you can find, except raw commodities, but compare it to cars, housing, anything. And there's been very, very little price inflation in it. And I think that's contributed, of course, to the growth in per capitas over time. Charlie, how about cereals and soup?
Well, I think those are examples where the moats got less hostile for the competitors. Part of the trouble was the the buying power got more concentrated and tougher. I mean, the big grocery chains now have a lot of clout, and then you add the Walmarts and the Costco's and the Sam's and it's a different world faced by the Kellogg's than the one they had 30 or 40 years ago.
Yeah, there will be a battle always between brands and retailers because the retailer would like his name to be the brand. And to the extent that people trust Costco or Walmart more than or as much as they trust the brand, then the value of having the brand moves over to the retailer from the product itself. And that's gone on for a long, long time. The first cases I know about in any real quantity were back with A&P in the 30s. And A&P, I believe, was the largest food retailer in this country, and they were also a big promoter of private labels. Ann Page, I think, was a big private label with them, for example. And they felt they could convince the consumer in the 30s that their brand meant more than having Del Monte on it or Campbell's or whatever it might be in the different categories. And people thought they were going to win that war for a while, and who knows? I mean, I don't know all the variables that went into the A&P's decline, but it was dramatic. I mean, it was a great American success story for a while, and then it was a great American failure. Charlie? Yeah.
The muscle power of the Sam's Clubs and the Costco's has gotten very extreme. A little earlier this morning when I was autographing books, a very good-looking woman came up to me and said she wanted to thank me. And I said, for what? And she said, you told me to buy this pantyhose I'm wearing from Costco. And I'd evidently made some previous comment about how amazing it was that Costco could get Hanes, of all people, to allow a co-branded pantyhose, Hanes-Kirkland, in the Costco stores. That wouldn't have happened 20 years ago.
She must have been pretty desperate if she was consoling with you on where to buy pantyhose, Shirley.